So my part of my video was corrupted when I was writing afterwards, so I have to do the rest of it here. But it's cool because I get to show you one of the earliest printings of the first edition Palladium game, and this is it right here, the one with the red Hydra and everything red in front. But the really interesting thing about this is something on the inside, which I thought was really, really cool. It's a chart that was in the first few printings of this role-playing game, but not in subsequent ones, because it was, the guys at Palladium knew it would probably be offensive, right? And it's through no fault of their own and no fault of Mr. Zambita, because what he did, was consult the DSM, that diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders or whatever, right, at the time. So, psychology is a bit interesting because, the DSM is a really big book. There are a lot of mental disorders, and they're making up mental disorders every day, right, it seems, right? And, part of that is... well, I'll talk a little bit about this, a little bit off, but it can give you the background for what I'm about to show you. So basically, if you study anything, right, you're going to find things that are normal, and you're going to create abnormal things. And here's what I mean by that. So let's say if you studied flies, and you went outside and you were studying flies, and there are all the flies that I found. But look, I found a fly that's not like the other normal flies. And then I found some other flies that aren't really like most of the flies that I find. So by virtue of studying it, I've created a new category for things that don't fit in, because there are going to be things that don't fit into the most of the flies that I find. So now these are the normal flies. Oh, normally I find these flies, but these are not normal. It's not normal. Look, that fly has a bit of reddish on it, and I don't normally see that on a fly. So that's abnormal. That's outside of the normal that I study. And you can think of that, that has to do with everything. Human populations, everything. There's a normal, and I've created abnormal. But this is all, everything's normal because it's part of nature. But the act of studying and categorizing things creates abnormality as a social construction, basically, right? So, as something that's constructed, right? So, and also culture changes, right? So when you're studying human population, especially with the, this manual of mental disorders, what they've basically done is they've studied, middle-class white people in the Western world. And so if you fall outside the middle-class white people, you're abnormal. Right? Because look, middle-class white people, this is our human population we studied. Oh, no, that doesn't happen. And, there's a person who's a bit different. So they're abnormal. They have mental disorders, right? They don't fit in our pile, right? So if you go to any culture in the world with your DSM, your manual of mental disorders, you're going to find a lot of mental disorders because no one's going to fit into that, middle-class white people zone, right? So, so the culture changed as well, right? So what the folks at Palladium did, or Mr. Kevin Zabitas, just went to the mental disorder DSM to find some mental disorders to put in his book, and he did, right? And at the time, because the culture has changed, and what they do is when the culture changes, they just say, oh, these aren't mental disorders anymore. No, that's normal. Okay, no, take those out of there, put them in here. And now, but that doesn't fit in. And then you get new mental disorders, right? And some other mental disorders aren't mental disorders anymore, right? So what happened is, it's all cultural, guys, a lot of it. Here it is right here. So here's a chart on neurosis. So these insanity tables, if you were to see a traumatic event or, get brain damage or something like that, you could roll on these charts, phobias, neurosis. But under the neurosis, because this came from the psychological manual, which was at the time had included homosexuality. So you could get, you could roll on this chart, and homosexuality or heterosexual if you're already gay, right? So if you're a gay guy, you'd have a bit of a sex or a gender identification change, right? Sexually attracted to the same sex, right? So, it's, and obviously they thought, okay, that's probably not good to include this in an insanity table, right? Homosexuality or heterosexual if you're gay. Let's not comment on that stuff at all, and let's take that out because, You know, that came from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. And that's no longer valid because, you know, the culture has changed, right? So, you know, we need to take that out. And it, you know, they were like, no, let's not offend anybody. So this is not a result of anything Palladium did. This comes straight from the psychological book of stuff that they don't think is normal, right? So they make it a mental disorder, right? So, you know, heads up whenever you hear normal and abnormal, because the very act of studying something creates categories of abnormal from you. If you study spoons, you're going to find some spoons that, that spoon's a bit unusual. Wow, that spoon has a hole in it that's specially created in it. That's not a normal spoon. Most spoons are like this. That's an abnormal spoon. That spoon has a mental disorder. Okay, so because it doesn't fit, right? Or you know, and it changes culturally, right? As soon as the culture changes, then your mental disorders change, right? So heads up, you know, that could be a whole nother vlog, and you know, I just thought it was interesting and puts this in context a little bit. Okay, so if you do see this, pick one up, man. It's so cool. It's a piece of role-playing history. I really like it. And it's a cool game in itself. And not this one, but the slightly further printing first edition fantasy role-playing game is available on PDF on RPG Now and Drive-Thru RPG. So these guys should really start paying me for plugging them, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's really cool. Okay, take care. Have a good one.